Hello, Clement.
Hey, Dr. V. So, I was looking at some different things to try and understand neurofeedback a little more, and I noticed there's a lot of, from an engineer's perspective, a lot of things that just sound wrong or don't make sense. So I just wanted to start off asking you, what is neurofeedback from your perspective?
Neurofeedback is you put a couple of electrodes on the head. Three. You've got two electrodes in two different positions. You have ground, and you're measuring, sorry to be technical, the voltage potential. You're feeding that back into a computer, and we're watching a screen, and that screen reflects the electrical activity at those regions.
So why does anybody need that? Who is that for?
That is a really good question. The bottom line is that we don't know. There's evidence that neurofeedback can help with a multitude of different disorders, but the research is very mixed up about it. So it appears, and forgive my words as a non-engineer, it appears to some degree to regulate some type of neural activity. Although exactly what, how, and where, at this point, I don't think anybody knows. We use it here to address a variety of symptoms: headaches, insomnia, depression, anxiety, and although it sounds like magic or witch oil or something, like Chinese medicine, it seems to work consistently with people.
I see. Well, it makes sense because the brain is just such a complex system that we don't exactly understand what's being affected. And actually, it brings me back to this brochure where the first paragraph they say, "What is brain dysregulation?" And throughout, they seem to have this idea of what the brain should look like.
So let's open up the focus a little bit. It's the core problem here is not getting lost in the weeds of what does dysregulation mean. The core problem, I think, what you're putting your finger on, is that clinically neurofeedback works. Otherwise, we just wouldn't have the success that we do. And we can argue later whether it's placebo or not, but clinically it works. And this is like a three-part stool, a three-legged stool. Mm-hmm. Scientifically, we have no clue. There's no theory. Finally, because it works, and I think because we don't have a theory, the marketing for neurofeedback is extraordinarily misleading.
I see.
It reminds me to some degree of when quantum theory was not first proposed, but it's become more popular. Everything's quantum this and quantum that and quantum change. So it becomes a marketing thing. So now we look at the brain in terms of dysregulation or asymmetries or I don't know what. We have to enhance this potential, or we got to hack this.
So brain hacking.
Yeah, so we evoke all these images and metaphoric words and we market them. But the bottom line is that there's really no theory. So we're almost free to say just about anything we want because there's nothing, there's no context. There's no ground truth we have yet about neurofeedback, except clinically it tends to work. And I think human beings, when they're faced with things like that, make up stories.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I mean, when you're marketing, you want to bring something, I guess, down to the level of, average consumer can understand. And I mean, just looking at this brochure again, the first paragraph, they just say, depending on your mental state, your brain produces 4 distinct brainwaves. But it's not quite so distinct, isn't it? Your brain is capable of more than 4 things.
I think it's dangerous maybe to go any further down here because the brain absolutely resists description by language. It's the damnedest thing. We use language for everything, right? But if you think about it, even if it's possible to be it, the brain does not work like language. It's not a linear process. So when they say there's 4 distinct brainwaves, to me, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, give myself some more credit. 5 years ago, I would have said, oh my God, yes. We have delta, we have theta, we have alpha, we have beta, we have gamma. And gamma's where all the amazing stuff happens, right? So we would say these things, but in reality, if you think about an electromagnetic frequency, it's, what is the right word here? Help me with this.
Yeah,
Is
that's
it
true.
instantaneous,
It's
all frequencies?
It's a spectrum, right? It's a continuous range.
Yeah.
Just like, there's 7 colors, but in between there's all these
exactly
different wavelengths, right? That's
and
basically what's happening.
and language makes us want to ascribe a functionality to every bandwidth. So, here I said we have something that works. We have an absence of scientific theory, and we have misleading marketing, right? So the marketing is absolutely misleading. And what we see in brochures and websites, there's not so much that they're outrageous claims. It's just they use ordinary language in ways that really don't fit.
Yeah, and they actually, besides ordinary language, I think they add in scientific sounding terms that may not even be relevant to neurofeedback.
I remember reading this, right? You talk about the brochure. They said, what did it say? Like, we want orderly brain
well,
waves?
let's say it's like, you can transform an unhealthy, dysregulated brainwave imbalance into a normal, healthy, organized pattern. Like, we got it. We got
So
it.
I remember when I read that, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, so if you've ever seen an epileptic discharge, right, in an EEG,
Yeah.
it's like, ka-choo-choo, ka-choo-choo,
Yeah, that's orderly.
ka-choo-choo.
Right?
That's real orderly,
Yeah.
right? If you look at somebody in a coma, it's
Yeah.
very orderly. And the irony of the language use here is that the presence, at least in my empirical experience of orderly visuals on reading the raw EEG, invariably is linked to not pathology, but symptoms, kind of social misperception or short-term memory impairment. The issue about using the word orderly is that if you really look at an orderly EEG, right, just say alpha, and you have 19 channels, or it doesn't matter, 46, we have a 47 channel here. And if all the alpha, right, is going up and down together, that is orderly. And without getting into the weeds of that, that is, pathological is a little bit too strong, but there's going to be issues there with processing information. Let's just leave it at that.
Well, I guess we can draw a parallel to an ECG, which is the heartbeat rhythm.
Right.
That, orderliness is good in some situations and some definitions of the word, but not all. For example, we know that, a healthy heart has this, very well-defined morphologically, PQRST wave, right? And that's orderly, that's good. But when your heart is beating very consistently, orderly, at the same exact interval, that's the sign that your heart is not too healthy or that you're in a state of stress, right? So there's this study on heart rate variability.
Right.
And I guess the brain is similar in that you don't want that rigidity.
Well, this again is getting technical, but think about this for a minute. You have your heart right here, you put an electrode there, and you measure it. Your source is defined. In the brain, we don't have that. You have a bunch of different electrodes reading different signals that are all mixed in together. Some are orderly, some are not. But what we do know is that, like you were saying earlier, the brain is extraordinarily dynamic. Within 10 seconds of time, you have a lot of stuff going on. So the presence of orderly EEG is actually, it's not good.